Everybody in attendance tonight, get a bottle in your hands and pull up. And if you are K&M,
Hello, and welcome to Inconsequential Souls. Today, we're going to be discussing the bow weapon throughout the Souls series. Now, I'm only familiar with how the bow weapon operates in Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 2. I haven't had the chance to see what a bow weapon was like in Demon Souls. And if I had, it was a friend of mine probably playing with a hyper mode version of a character using some form of bow where they had low health, some kind of ring item that allowed them to do double damage or triple damage or something like that. And the bow they were using resembled a Dragon Slayer bow from Dark Souls 1, if I recall. Now, hyper mode would activate when the character's health would drop maybe close to anywhere from 10 to 15% of their health was left, where they could practically die with one hit from an enemy, and it would activate the effect of the ring to do the double or triple damage. Similar to the red tier stone ring from Dark Souls 1 and 2 series. Now, I say that because from the outside looking in, that seems like a really good playstyle, whereas you could be a bow only type of character and it wouldn't be a handicap. But again, I haven't used a bow weapon myself in the Demon Souls series, so that's just speculation. But it did look fun. If I recall watching my friend play, it looked really fun, the type of character that they were using, and I think that's one of the reasons that I was excited to maybe pick up the game. It's so blurry, and it was such a long time ago, so I don't know for certain. Don't hold me to that. But anyhow, okay. So before I begin, I want to discuss the 4 essential weapons of faith, and I discussed those in the last video, and they are your trusty dagger or dirt, your optional buckler or some kind of arm guard, throwing knives to control spacing, and of course your bow and arrows, which is what I want to focus on today. Now, I want to use Dark Souls 2 as a prime example of where I think bows as a main weapon have gotten a little bit better. But there were some things in the first Dark Souls that I did enjoy about bows that didn't make it into Dark Souls 2, unfortunately. And it's tough to say if they were novelty features, but I do think that a lot of them contributed more to the character of the individual bow you were using, in a way where they became situational weapons rather than it being a thing, well, why use any other bow but this bow? Which I won't say Dark Souls 2 does, because there are different bows for different builds. Lots of bows. Too many. I just feel as though there is a problem that arises where some bows are just better than others, in almost every way. And I'll cover that in a little bit. Okay, so bow comparisons in Dark Souls 2. The first bow I would say that I decided to try to equip and use seriously was the Bellkeeper's bow. Now, the thing about that bow that I remember is it had a slightly, and this is in hindsight, I didn't recognize this immediately when I picked it up because I was still becoming familiar with the game. This is when Dark Souls 2 is completely new to me. Picking up that bow and using it, it seemed to have at least from 1 second to half a second longer draw speed before you could release it. And at the time, which this isn't true, but I thought that this was the case because I thought it compensated for the extra draw time that it took to release the arrow. I was under the impression it had more of a punch to it, where in theory it did more poise damage than an average bow, which wasn't the case. It didn't at all. And my only guess was that there was some misguided idea for a meta with the bow based on timing of the release of the arrow. And the reason that that was misguided was because of how rolls work in Dark Souls 2. Now, I won't get into that because that's not what this discussion is about. But anyone familiar with how adaptability works in Dark Souls 2 knows that the invincibility frames for rolls are inconsistent, and it's not a readable thing. It just depends on how much adaptability your opponent has or how much they don't. And sometimes, depending on how much they had, an attack will land during a certain point in their roll, or it just won't. It's not a guaranteed thing. I would say that with the bow that I use, and I recommend, which is the Hunter's Blackbow, I say that is the definitive thief's bow. If you're a thief and you're using any other bow but that, you're doing it wrong. Now, with the definitive bow, the Hunter's Blackbow, I found the timing for the release of the arrow to be very close to right when your opponent is about to recover from their roll. And this is where it gets completely stupid for me. But I just wanted to put that out there, that with the timing of when you release your shot, which I say is a little bit before your opponent recovers from their roll, it almost doesn't matter how much adaptability they may or may not have. More than likely you're going to connect. That isn't always true. You can do everything right and still miss. And this goes into why I think bows need a bit of a fixer-upper going into the third game. Now, we didn't get to see what bows would be like in the network test. Again, because either it was a difficult item to find or it just didn't make it. what we do get to see is a very small clip, which I did enjoy. It looks like the bow might have some kind of quick draw function where you can come out of a shot from a roll, which is really good, and that kind of gives the bow a little bit more character and makes it a little bit more of a main weapon, because before you always had to go through several steps before firing an arrow, and unless you really knew how to control distance and fake your opponent out, you would wind up having to, well, one, switch to the bow, two, hand the bow, find a good position, draw, and fire. And a few of those steps would be, of course, a repeat. And when you fired the arrow, there was no guarantee that it was going to hit or not, unless you played the misguided meta, which I mentioned earlier with adaptability. It's basically waiting for your opponent to roll and roll and roll and roll and roll until finally you get your shot off, and you may or may not hit them. And it wasn't, I mean, it's effective. You can main a bow. Whether or not it's fun is debatable. It's just not a very attractive style, and it kind of contradicts the purpose of a bow. Now, don't get me wrong. With the Hunter's Blackbow, you can snipe. You can do good damage. It packs a really good punch. It's just that it's not a very stylish way to play. And again, it's this whole roly-poly method where you draw your arrow and your opponent rolls and rolls and rolls, and you release the arrow, and by the time you can guarantee your shot, they're right in your face, and you might as well just hit them with something else. Now, it has its place. It's just, I don't know, it could use for an improvement, and I think that clip, as short as it is, gives me some impression that they might be making an improved adjustment to bows going into Dark Souls 3. Either way, I'm just gonna cross my fingers and trust that they know what they're doing. But anyhow, this has been Inconsequential Souls, and I hope to see you next time.
Snakeskin EKs, tight turtlenecks, Jordache jeans, stone watch, piece of match.